Good evening and welcome to another episode of Unstoppable Overcomers. And I'm your host, Dorothy Odell. Before we get started and bringing on our special guest tonight, I'm going to go over tonight's sponsors of the show. Uh, Strong Foundations Coaching and Consulting. Jen Zahari has over 25 years of leading, mentoring, training, and coaching people. Jen provides individuals and business personalized support to get aligned with their best life. For more information, go to Jen's website, www.jenzahari.com, and book your free 30-minute consultation today. I promise you will not be disappointed. As well, we also have Jen's book, Created No Way Out. This book is about a woman on the verge of ending her life following decades of feeling unheard and unseen and suffering from anxiety. Looking back on her life as she moves through her final days, she recognizes how much pressure she put on herself at all times and has lost sight of her self worth and confidence until she meets a stranger. Created is filled with emotions, unique insight on mental health, an ending, and an ending you do not want to miss. You can get that book on Amazon or at Jen's website, jenzahari.com. And I have my copy, so get your copy too. It is an amazing read. I actually read it in no time flat, like a day and a half. I couldn't put it down. It was so filled with just filled at I was sitting at the edge of my seat just waiting for what's next. With that, I'm going to bring our amazing guest, Janet Wiszowaty, onto the show tonight. Welcome, Janet.
Hi, happy to be here.
I am so happy that you're here and all the way back from France. She was in France for 5 weeks. I'm sure she'll be telling you a little bit about that story. But welcome to the show, Janet, and tell our viewing audience just who you are and what it is that you do.
Well, I'm a bit of an eclectic, and I've learned to reinvent myself. But my background is policing. I was an emergency police dispatcher with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Um, 23, well, I guess I've been doing it since 1982. And then when I retired, I did it as contract. So, and traveled and worked in the Eastern Arctic, in Iqaluit, in Nunavut, and in Whitehorse, and married to a now retired police officer. Raised kids, raised grandkids. Um, I don't know. I'm just curious about everything, and when you have challenges in your life and go through the things like diagnosis of PTSD, and that you have to decide what you want to do with the rest of your life. And so I learned to reinvent myself. I'm an author now, and love to travel, and we will talk more about France.
I
But
just got Janet's book today. Janet was nice enough to send me a copy. So, Janet, where can our viewing audience get their copy?
Amazon, it's
Amazon.
on Amazon. Yeah,
And it's called The Year the World Paused. And
yeah.
I read Janet's story and read the first. Of course, I had to go to the end to read Janet's story, and then I started at the beginning and read the first lady's story. And wow, definitely a book you want to get your hands on for inspiration. And when the pandemic hit, we all had a choice. We could stay in our houses and not do anything and just poor me, but that's not what Janet did. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the book before we go
I'll
on?
tell you a little bit about the book. So what happened was, and I want everyone to think of this, and we all get inspired thoughts. You wouldn't be doing this show if you hadn't been inspired at somewhere along the way, right? And
Right.
so in November 2020, I woke up with the title in my head, and it would not go away. And I trained with Jack Canfield since 2010, and Jack always said, when you get an inspired thought, you should act on it. So I thought, okay, I guess it's the title of a book. And I thought about 2020, and my life was very different than what I was hearing, because I was only home 14 days out of 2020 because I worked away and I was essential service. So I was 5 months in Iqaluit, and then I went to Whitehorse, and then back to Iqaluit till the end of the year, and then to Whitehorse again. And so I thought, okay, and I was in an online program, and I said, okay, who wants to be in a book? And I had no Nothing. Like I've been an author. I've written a chapter for books. I've done
Mhm.
that, but this was the first time I was taking it all together. And thankfully, one of the authors is a very dear friend of mine, and we met because we were both participated in a publication, and she's also a publisher now, so she helped me with that part. But I wanted people to find people that had had a different experience. Like we all went through the stages, right? The stages of, oh my God, what are we going to do? People are getting sick and blah, blah, blah,
Mhm.
to where we went. And so mine was like, how did we come out the other end? We had a choice. And so these stories are 20 other authors plus myself from around the world and their stories. And they're all doing really well as far as how they've grown through it.
Yeah.
And so there's a Catherine from Ghana, West Africa. We've got Betty from Alaska. She's amazing. I just am so grateful to each and every one of them. And then we've got others from Canada, the rest of the United States, and then three from the UK, and then one from Switzerland. So
Okay.
we've got quite a group. So it we all experienced because it was a world pandemic, right? So
Right.
everybody experience things, some of it the same, but others, like you say, we have a choice on how we deal with it and
Mhm.
how we come out the other end. And they have all chosen to do well and help others. So it was quite an experience. Uh, it was a challenge, like from the thought in November 2020 to
Mhm.
the ebook coming out in June 2021 and to the paperback coming out in August 2021. And
That's
I
awesome.
found, word of mouth, right? Like a friend of mine who's a children's author, I says, hey, will you edit the book? And she said, I'll do content, but I know somebody that can do grammar. And so that's one thing I wanted to do is make sure it was very well edited. And believe
Mhm.
me, I just feel for anybody who writes a book and tries to do it themselves, because we had so many eyes reading those chapters, and even right down to the last minute, we still found little errors.
Yeah.
So
And that's the thing, like you're right, you definitely need a good editor to get that, because the last thing the world wants is people to have a book with grammar errors and things like that. So I get it. And it's just a challenge, being an author
mhm,
myself. I get it. And being a first time and had no clue. God told me to write a book, so I wrote a book.
yeah,
And it's then what, right? And
yeah,
congratulations and kudos to you. And like you said, we all had a choice at the beginning of this pandemic. We could have
yeah,
just chose to say shut up in our houses and not do anything, or we could have learned a new skill, and
yeah,
that's what you did. So that's
yeah.
awesome.
And we don't always know we have a choice. So that's why these books are good, because it
Yeah.
it tells them, it shows them that they're not alone, right?
Yeah.
Your book, that the created, the book you just spoke about, created, they're all stories that'll show these are normal people that are writing these stories. These
Mm-hmm.
are people like you and me and like anybody out there. It's not that you're any different. We're not
No.
different. We just chose, or we had some little spark in us that told us to do it. And that's what I like doing, is just helping people, like, you know, believe in yourself, because I didn't believe in myself. It took somebody else to believe in me to get me to where I am.
Right. So can you share a little bit about your overcoming story then for our viewing audience?
Um, about my diagnosis and what I.
Whatever section. Now, see, this is what happens, folks. When people first of all say, "Well, I don't have an overcoming story," and then people wait a minute. Well, I've overcome this, this, and this, and that's what's so great. So, whatever was on your mind first, that's the one.
Okay, I'll go to that because, um, like I say, I've had to reinvent myself. I've had health problems for many, many, many years, and then it was a car accident, and it was interesting because it was the fourth car accident I'd had in 10 years, and it took me out for a year. But I found one night, but it saved my life. I want people to really know that sometimes we have these things happen to us, and we may not know why, but really it did save my life, because after the car accident, They found I had ovarian cysts still growing. They found I had an arterial venous malformation, which was like a aneurysm behind my ear. And then I was diagnosed with PTSD. And so everything I thought that was happening to me was, I thought car accident, turned out to be work related. And the thing that was interesting was I was sent to a psychologist because accident, right? I had found myself one night crying in the living room in the dark, wishing I'd died in that car accident. And believe me, physically, to look at me, you wouldn't have thought anything wrong. And I think that's what people really need to know. People that suffer with, for a better word, mental illness, because I don't really think it's a mental illness. I think it's just a shift in our on how we deal with things, is that we look normal. We don't look like anything's wrong. And yet our minds are going constantly. But also, I think I'd had it for many years. All my health issues and that. I really think that if doctors would start looking at a deeper level with health issues, that they would find that there's more to it, that there's a lot of this, because I was able then to control a little more. But the first psychologist I went to, believe me, I would never, ever recommend her. She might be good for somebody else, definitely not for me. And for people to understand, it's okay to look for somebody else. Don't ever, ever work with someone you are not comfortable with, because mentally it's not healthy for you. Mentally, physically, whatever you want to say with it. So I finally found my own, and I found this lady. She was teaching a course at night school or something, or a weekend class, and I thought, she sounds interesting. She's a psychologist. So I phoned the school and I says, does she take clients? And they says, well, we don't know. I said, well, here's my number. And if she does, get her to call me. So she did, and I worked with her, and she was amazing. She totally, totally amazing. She took one look at me, and she's looking, and we started talking. She says, this has nothing to do with car accident, has everything to do with your job. So just to get a little more clarification about my job, being an emergency police dispatcher, or whether it's 911, we did the 911 for the police, because usually when somebody calls 911, they say police, fire, ambulance. Well, if it was police, it came to us. But we can't have any emotion when we're dealing with an emergency, whether it's an officer that's in trouble, or in my case, it was an officer I'd been close to had committed suicide. A little girl about the same age as my granddaughter that called in the middle of the night because her mom was being beat up by a boyfriend. And all I could see is my granddaughter safely at home and this child so scared. And those are hard to separate. And I always say, because I truly believe it, is that if you have an emotional attachment to something, that's when your trauma comes in. I can deal with any emergency, on the phone, deal with it. But when it comes to something that's associated, like this little girl could have been my granddaughter. Mm-hmm. And so your emotions go to a totally different place. Like this officer, I talked to him. I know I have a pretty good inkling of why he did it, because I know the history of a call that he went on. And yet I saw him like 2-3 weeks before it happened, and he was happy, and we were having fun, and at our Christmas party and stuff. So we don't always see those signs. And anybody that might feel guilty about you don't see the signs, that, you know what, he gave me a gift that people maybe not even think of as a gift. Because you see, the man that introduced my husband and I shot himself 3 days before our wedding at my mother-in-law's place. And he had been a friend of my dad's. His funeral was the same day as our wedding. And I struggled with that a little bit, and but was young and married and stuff. But when this other one happened, and I remember talking to him, and he had said about this case that he was working on. He says, Janet, I can't rationalize this one in my head. And then I thought back to Henry, and as an older person, as a grown-up per se, because I was young when I got married. I could look back and think that was what was going on in Henry's life, and maybe he couldn't rationalize what was going on. And that was the only way he thought out. And so what it gave me was sort of a peace of mind when I could go back and look at that with the help of the psychologist, and to realize I can't control everything. The only thing I can control is my emotions around it. And if I can look at that and say, okay, I was there for him when he needed me to be, and it wasn't my place. I wasn't meant to stop him, however you want to do it, how hard it is for anybody. And as a dispatcher, we take calls like that all the time with somebody wanting to commit suicide.
Mhm.
The thing is the way I look at it is I can be there for the moment when they need me to be there.
Right.
My
And
role
that's
isn't
powerful.
necessary at that point to stop them. My 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 position at that point is to listen, because that's what they want.
Mhm.
They just want somebody there. And if by chance something you say can stop that, that's great. But never to feel guilty if you don't, because that's their choice. Let's honor, as horrible as it may sound, there we all have choices. And to know that you thought a lot of them and were them as a friend when they needed it, and when they made the choice not to be there anymore, that was their choice.
Absolutely. And
So
I'm sorry that happened to you. As somebody who, my uncle took his life too on
yeah.
Christmas Day, only we didn't find the body till 3 months later. It was, it's still, I mean, like you said, when it sparks, it took me years to get over that. Like, absolutely. And I didn't even realize that was the first thing. Like, when I introduced myself, that was the first thing that came out of my mouth. And I
Yeah.
was just like, how messed up is that? And I didn't even realize I was doing it until a good friend of mine called me on it, and said, and I was like, I wasn't even cognizant that that's what I was doing. So, with healing and things like that, I've gotten to a place where it doesn't affect me like it used to. But I mean, I don't know. Will I ever get the answers? No. And I've learned to live with that, right? And I think that's, as somebody who's lost somebody to suicide, the first thing is like, well, why would they do that? Or, like you said, the blame game. And for years, d-
Mhm.
our family members, certain family members would play the blame game, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. Obviously there was some demon inside of him that he couldn't control any longer, and that's why. And um and that's why we're so passionate here on helping our veterans and our first
Yep.
responders, because getting you guys are in that all the time, and hearing those stories. I couldn't imagine being a dispatcher and listening. Hello, Melanie, thanks for joining us.
Hey,
Getting
Melanie.
those calls, those
Yeah.
getting those calls in desperation, and then not being emotionally, you have to be emotionally detached while you're dealing with a phone call. But then there's also afterwards, and
Well, and emotionally detached. Like, after I finished with the psychologist, when she said to me she don't need to work with me anymore, it was like, oh my God, now what? Now what? Now what I do? Oh, Melanie, here for you. Um, that I started to take. There's no gap. There's a gap, right, between working with a psychologist and to where you're going to go, because it's like, now what? She was helping me, helping me, helping me, and now there's nothing. There didn't seem to be anything, and that's why when I started doing all my other training and taking other courses, and that is because for me. And now I use tools that she taught me and tools I've learned along my courses. And one of them, and I'll tell you about your uncle too. And one thing that I learned on my journey, and my first chapter I ever wrote in a compilation was on journaling, and I was challenged to write that. I thought I was going to write something else. She said, "No, Jan, I want you to write on journaling." I said, "I don't know anything about journaling." Anyways, it turned out I knew more than I thought. But in that is that we can write letters, and I call them release letters, forgiveness letters, and I teach them in my journaling workshop. But we ritualize everything that's important to us, marriage and christenings and stuff like that. So in the process, when I have, there's a story I read, and actually I've got it on YouTube. I'll send you the link where I read this story. It's called The Little Soul in the Sun, and it's a little soul having a conversation with God. And so I read that in my workshops, and then I have everybody participate to write a forgiveness letter. Now, that forgiveness letter or a release letter, and I'll explain a little more. The forgiveness letter is could be yourself. Like, you forgive yourself for all the pressure you've put on yourself for different things. A release letter, and so I wrote a release letter the very first time I wrote a release letter. Because my dog had died, and I was so upset about my dog not being there for my dog, that I had to finally write her this letter to let go of all of that in my head. And so that was the second. I had to write another letter to somebody that I was upset with, and that. And the one thing, the person who taught me about the letters was, you don't have to mail them. Just write them. Just write everything. So Melanie, if you want to write that letter, write that letter. And what I do is I put everything in that letter. Yes, it is. And if you want to connect with me, I'll send you my chapter. And so what I did was I had everybody in the workshop write their letters. But when I write the letters, I put a little bit of essential oil on them, and then I go outside and burn them. So if it's in a safe place, to let it go and release it. Because, we don't need it here anymore. We don't need it here anymore. And sometimes we just need to talk to somebody that's gone on before us, and just let them know how much we love them. And nobody, I don't believe anybody that's gone before us wants anybody to suffer or feel guilt about anything. And
Exactly.
I think that that needs to be said, and that really more about what you're doing, what my friend Sarah's doing with Power of Our Story, and all of these stories that are coming out now. They have to come out to show people it's okay to talk about this.
Yeah.
We went too long to make, oh, you can't talk about that. Shh, don't talk about that. It's a secret. That shouldn't be a secret. These people lived, laughed. They were part of our lives. And celebrate what we had with them. And, whatever your belief system, that they're in a place where they're loved.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I love what you said, about writing the letter or even burning. And I've done both. And even, so I was doing a side note, I was doing a Feng Shui vision board. And one of the things was the last thing exercise that we did was to write the list of things that were holding us back so that this could be our best year yet. Right. So, I mean, the instructor said, write 5 to 10 things. Me, being the overachiever that I am, wrote front and back, both sides of a sheet of paper that was, I don't know, like the 8x10.
Yeah.
And then I was out front there in Wisconsin. I'm here in Canada, and out on my front porch at 10 o'clock at night, burning this piece of paper. And at first it wouldn't burn. I'm like, oh no, you bitch, you're being burned. Like, go, right? And I didn't stop until that thing was in ashes. And so, because I was like, this is the year, nothing is going to hold me back. And, for years it was the grief of my uncle, then losing my grandfather, who was my rock. And last year I lost my dad to cancer. So it's just been, one thing after another. But that's okay, because that's life is all about lessons. And we go through, we just had this conversation with Kimberly today, my business partner, where, she had just gone through an intense weekend. I had just gone through an intense weekend, and just reminding ourselves who we are, what we're out to create, and being that person for everybody, and to release those emotions. So whatever you need to do to release it. And like you said, um, last week's guest, Jonathan, I had mentioned that I had been in an assist program. An assist is helping people get through suicidal thoughts and things like that, and putting a plan in place so that they don't do that. Of course, if that's their choice, that's their choice. But at least you nailed it on the head when you said people just want to be heard. And why? And I said, me being assist trained is not the norm. And like Jonathan said, why shouldn't it be the norm? We should be talking about these things because
Yes.
it is normal.
Yeah.
It's and if anybody who's never had a suicidal thought, you're damn blessed, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Because I mean, life gets pretty hairy sometimes, and whether you're a dispatcher or whether you have had somebody that's done certain things in their life, or somebody who's killed themselves, we all go through different traumas. And so, just having that backup to say, wait a minute, okay, I may be feeling this, but what are the steps that I can do to get myself out of that? So that you're right.
Here's
It should be the
something
norm.
that I heard a long time ago, and I believe it to be fact because I also trained NLP, timeline therapy, and hypnotherapy, and I did a lot of this work, and I've got certifications, but I did it for me, and now it gives me the knowledge to maybe guide or suggest or help somebody else on their journey. I'm not a therapist, but I am a coach and a listener, and connections that I can help people maybe move forward that they maybe never thought of, because that's what happened to me in my life. I had somebody believe in me, like I said at the beginning, believe in me when I couldn't believe in myself, and that's what I want to be for somebody else. But also, I heard this story one time about this man had phoned the crisis line, right? He was depressed and he was suicidal, and so the person on the other line said, "What's your weather like there?" And he says, "It's snowing." And she says, "Do you have a neighbor that maybe needs their lawn or their sidewalk shoveled?" He says, "Yeah." "Why don't you go shovel their sidewalk for you and then call me back and I will talk with you?" And he called back and said, "Do you feel better?" He said, "Yeah." So you and I were talking before we came on the show about giving back and helping somebody else. We can change our thoughts pretty quickly if we have the tools. And nothing but this one thing I saw. Uh, it was a video, I guess, on Facebook or something. But it was this little 2-year-old. She's about 2, standing on the seat in the car, having this terrible temper tantrum. And she was yelling and screaming and crying and stuff. And all of a sudden, her favorite song came on the radio, and she was switched just like that. And she was happy and laughing. We have that power. We have that power to do that. And if we can put tools in place, so if we're down in the dumps, depressed or something, put a timer on. Okay, I allow myself half an hour to be like this.
Yeah.
Don't try and stop it. Like, I think somebody says, "Oh, don't be like that. Don't be like that. Just forget it. Just ignore that." No, I think we have to acknowledge it and then go for a walk. I know when I was in France and we were house sitting on this horse farm, like we're out anywhere. Like, I take the dog for the walk through the bush, and the horses were there, and it was like you listen to the birds sing and the breeze and stuff, and it's like we're not close enough to nature. Like, I'm live in the city, and I could go for walks in the morning, and I do, and it's nice to sit and listen to the birds and that. Our next house sit is going to be on an island in by Vancouver Island, one of the smaller islands. We'll be able to walk on the beach, but it's like take yourself out of what the norm is, and that's how I recreated my life. We house sit now all over the world because I don't think I would be the same person. I'd probably be, I don't know, I might never leave my house if we didn't do this because, it's a safe place. I can get buried in a book. I can do all kinds of things. But when we're going out, and I say that we house it all over the world and we give people peace of mind. But while we're doing it, we're looking after that. And yes, Melody, we do have that power. We have so much power, but you know what? I think we don't realize it, or if we did ever realize it, we've forgotten. And things we have to relearn, right?
Mhm.
So, anyways,
Absolutely.
I could go on and
Absolutely.
on. You know that.
Well, that's great. No, and you're right. And I love what you said, because we all have emotions,
Hmm.
and a grief is a powerful sucker. It could come at any time. And I've learned to, instead, for years, I suppressed and suppressed and suppressed, and to the point where my heart was like a stone. I truly feel that I don't think there was too much that could have penetrated my heart at one time. I mean, I have a heart for to help others at all times, but I mean, to let somebody into my life, it just wasn't something that I did easily. And now, through years of healing, therapy, different coaches, things like that, um, I allow myself to feel it. You're right. I give myself a timeline. I allow
Yeah.
myself to feel it, but then I have the tools in place that I quickly get myself right back out of it. But and it's funny because I I've had so many different spectrums. I've lost a lot of people in my life, and I would have to say losing my dad was one of the biggest things, and I was very vulnerable with it through our entire journey, from him getting cancer to the end. I shared the good, the bad, and the ugly, and I had one person say, just get over it. Life is like death and taxes, or something like that. It was
Yeah.
this person's response, and I'm just like, I lived my life 44 years. No, 45. My dad was in my life for 45 years. 45 years with this gentleman who was my first love, that would listen to me on anything, that was always there for me. And you went from having him in your life to nothing in 9 days. Right. And it was just like, and then to be told to get over it, because in life there's only two guarantees: death and taxes. Well, we all go through our griefs differently, and we all, reach certain points in our lives differently. And so, just no matter what people tell you, you need to grieve how you need to grieve.
Yeah.
And, my mom's going through that right now. Their anniversary is in May. My mom's birthday is in May. So, and it's the first, right? The first one without him. And so she's been not taking it well the last couple weeks, and I'm like, okay, so you're going to allow yourself to grieve it, but you need to find the way to, whatever works for you, to get yourself out of it. And what works for me might not work for you. So, today she finally sounds better on the phone. She got out of the house today. So those are small steps. So allow yourself where you need to be, but don't lay in it, is
Well, and
definitely.
here's a suggestion as well as I think one of the worst things that we can do is not to talk about it.
Yeah.
You know, I think that we have to share the person that we lost. And I'll tell you, Henry introduced me to my husband, introduced us. He'll always be a part of our life. And we're very grateful to him for having done that. Our anniversary's coming up. We'll be married 50 years. And it's all because of him. He introduced us. And so
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. To the same man,
To the same man.
to the
Yes.
same man. And but I think that something that again, going back to a ritual, what if you planned that time on her anniversary is for her to share like their wedding or how they met, and to talk about that, and for all of you maybe to write a love letter to your dad and then have that ceremony around, you know it's just, I think that I've been reading a lot, and I like a lot of historical stuff, and I think that some of the what we would call pagan ways have
Mhm.
been lost and maybe not put in where they did celebrate. more of
Yeah.
someone leaving. And yeah, just because sharing the person you've lost, like my friend passed away in September, and sadly, I wasn't able to see her. I got home the day before she passed away. And but I lived just down the back lane from her, and we were very, very close. And even today, I was looking at, oh, I should phone Kathy. Well, no, she's not there anymore. And so, but I talked to her. I talked to my dad. I talked to my grandfather.
Hmm.
And I think some people may think you're crazy, but who cares? It's your business, and they're
Exactly.
part of your life. How can you let go of something that's not it's not permanent? Like, I don't believe they're still with us. They're still around us.
Exactly. Well, it's funny because I I totally believe that. I believe my dad has come back as a butterfly and almost beheaded me. I told that story before. And I see hawks like all the time around me. And I know that it's him.
Mm.
And like, oh, they're circling me all the time. So,
Yeah.
hey, Tim,
Hi, Tim.
welcome. Welcome, Inger.
Hi, Inger. So,
So yeah, I totally understand that. And just, well, and it's funny, my dad's 70th birthday was March 20th. So to honor him, we threw a party in his honor
yeah.
and had a barbecue, invited people over, and just shared the good times. And that's what we did. And you're right, it's celebrating those moments. Don't hide from it, because like you said, people, your friend introduced you to your spouse, and
Yeah.
those things need to be celebrated.
And my dad passed. I can remember, and some people think I may be cross, but my dad had health problems for many, many years. He was had kidney disease, was on dialysis, but on and off he wasn't well. And but his passing was a beautiful story, and he passed on Valentine's Day. And the story is what makes me smile all the time, because my dad did some stuff that's very unusual. He went and had coffee with his cronies on Valentine's Day. It was a dialysis day, and he never went out except to dialysis on his
Mhm.
dialysis day. He went to the clinic where he had dialysis and gave them chocolates and stuff. Then he went to the drugstore, and you have to think, I was very, very small town. And he went to the drugstore to get mom chocolates and a card. And the girl said, Ted, are these for Elaine? And he said, yes. And he says, well, the card says to my husband, and the chocolates, and Elaine doesn't like these kinds of chocolates. He says, oh, go get her what she likes. So he went and got it. He came home, had lunch with mom, told her the story, gave her chocolates, and he's waiting to go to dialysis. Mom went downstairs. She's coming upstairs, and she heard my dad say, what's happening? And he was gone.
Wow.
And you know what? There were years where we get calls, you better come home because dad might not make it and that. But you
Yeah.
know what? I want to go like that. Like it we had him much longer than we ever thought he would. And let's look at what we had.
Yep.
And in his passing, he passed just before he on Valentine's Day, and his birthday was May 4th, and he would have been 75. And but you know what? We have to be, you know, we can't be sad all the time. Nobody wants us to be sad. Yeah, we've got a
Exactly.
loss. There's a piece of us missing. They're a
Yep.
part of our lives. Like
Yeah.
Kathy's a part of my life, but you know what? I had her as a friend. That's something to celebrate. I'm blessed that I knew her.
Exactly. And that's what
You
Inger
know?
says here. She says it's important to
Yes,
celebrate
Inger.
those moments and special people who have passed.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that should be the normal. And
Yeah.
talking about what we've been talking about, like mental
Yeah.
illness and PTSD, that talking about it should be the normal, not putting it under a bushel and hiding from it. Um, and that's why we have the show, and that's why we have
Yeah.
amazing guests like Janet come on, because we're breaking the barriers of normal and what normal should be. So tell us a little bit about your Now What program. I love that when I read your book and things like that. Now what? I love that.
Well, well, this is what happened. Like I said, after I saw the psychologist, it's like, now what? So for part of my coaching and my writing, that's all like, okay, we don't know what's going to happen next, but we can be curious about it. So now what? So I've done all this training that let's see, we don't know where our journey is going to take us, but we don't know where we're going to be if we don't take that first step.
Yep.
Like that, like I said about my inspired thought about the book, right? I didn't know I could put that book out within a year. And the funny thing is, you look at that, it says Janet Wiszowaty and 20 other authors. It came out in 2021. It's 21 authors. I never put that together. It came together after. So it's like, we don't always know what we can do. And that's why I love coaching and writing what I do, to allow people to have a look, like, talk to me, check with me. I might not be the right person for you, but that doesn't mean I don't know somebody that might be the best person for you. And just like that first psychologist I had, she wasn't the best for me. She might be for somebody else, certainly wasn't for me. But boy, I kept looking and I found a great one. So now what is what do we do next? Where do we go next? And it's okay to wallow for a little while. We all go through that. That's the rhythm of life, right? We're going to go through stages where, like right now, I've been sick, and I've been reading some amazing books, because I fall asleep, I read, or I listen to talking books and that. But sometimes our bodies just need to shut down for a little while until that next stage. And to find what do you really love? We can't always put a name to it, but we can put an emotion to it. And for me, when the house sitting, because we sort of touched on that a bit, I wanted to travel. That for ever since less than I can remember, we've wanted to travel. He had a heart attack at 43 years old. We're very fortunate. He just turned 75. But then our kids were young, and we decided, okay, I always said we can't afford. So then I say, how can we afford? And so we house sit. We pay our way over. We paid our way over to France. We house sat for 5 weeks for this beautiful couple on this farm. We met amazing people. We don't pay for our accommodations, but we got to see, right? We look after their animals. We get an experience. And I learned about an author that wrote her books about the citadel that was there, the La City. And so now I read her books, because now I can envision the country. And we house sat in Spain for 3 weeks and before COVID. And it's just, we travel and we experience these things, but it's the people. And for myself, like less than 75 now, I'm almost 69. And it's like, there's still lots of life in us yet. Let's have some fun. You don't hit a certain age and say, okay, I'm done. No, I don't want to be done.
Exactly.
Thanks, Inger.
And that's something else. That's something else we talked about, because I had said, must have been amazing to work with Jan Canfield. Yeah. And you had, okay, there was something I was going to say about that. What were you just talking about before? Sorry.
About how can we?
Yes, how can we? And that's the thing. Like, you find a way. You don't give up.
Yeah.
And
it's amazing what comes forward. It's amazing what shows up when we take that step.
Right.
Yeah.
We can't afford it.
That's a great way, Jeff, to reframe it. And I have to say, Jack Canfield is amazing. He's been my mentor and teacher since 2010. And it's all about reframing, right? You look at something and you reframe it. We could have gone to Germany in the late 70s, early 80s. Friends of ours were posted there. They invited us to come. We could have stayed with them. We said, sorry, we can't afford it. But it took Les having a heart attack and us nearly losing him to say, come on, let's get over this. And it's amazing what shows up.
Exactly. And Inger says, yes, absolutely. Jack Canfield's awesome. There was another reason why I brought that up. And sorry, for some reason, my brain just went boom to another location.
Well, I'm certified in Jack's success principles. So
Yes, and that is so. If Jack is listening, Jack, we would love to have you on the show. If you at any point you've ever watched this show, you've seen that I had a vision board up here and I showed the top 10 people that I wanted on the show, and Jack is on one of them, as well as Mark Victor Hansen and Aubrey,
Patty Aubrey.
Patty Aubrey. Thank you. See, the mind is
I
like
know, I know. And
it's.
you know what? One of the books that changed my life when I was in that down period of time, I said, I was in those 4 car accidents, and I feel that God gave me 3 taps on the first 3, and He gave me a 2x4 and made me sit in my what until I got the act together. And I read a book called The Magic of Thinking Big, and it's by David Swartz, and it was written, I think, late 40s, early 50s, and that book changed my life. That really did. Louise Hay, all those books, Wayne Dyer. But I mean, when I was really down there, The Magic of Thinking Big, and that's when I started making my list, and that's when I went back to school, and that's when I started my training. But it's like, let's let's look at ways, don't let other people look like those naysayers fall away after a while. You don't have to not be around them.
Mhm.
There's, those negative people, they eventually don't want to be around you.
Yep,
But that doesn't mean you have to lose total contact of them. It's just
exactly.
you have to be strong in who you are and your beliefs. And if you can't do it yourself, find somebody to stand with you. And that's what you do, and that's what I do, and
Yep,
that's what Jeff does, you know,
yep.
and Greg and Jack and all these other people out there that are out talking about this. We want to bring you together. We want to hold you when you can't hold yourself.
Yeah, because we've been there. We know what it's like.
Yeah,
Know what it's like. There have been times in my life where literally it has been moment to moment, breath to breath, just to get me through. And then I thought, okay, if I can get through the next 5 minutes, I can get through the next hour. And if I can get through the next hour, then I can get through the next 2 hours until I hit the 24-hour mark. And then, if I just go to sleep right now, everything is going to be fine when I wake up. And that is exactly how I've lived my life in some moments where it was moment to moment and reaching out to people that I needed to get me to where I am today. And there were times I would have to say that it was very uncomfortable to ask for help. As a matter of fact, I grew up with parents that said, if you ask for help, that it was a sign of weakness, and that it was, if they're helping you, then that means they want something in return, and that is not what life is all
that's not.
about.
But we have to
And
learn that. That's part of our journey, right?
right, right,
Mm.
and that's the thing. Like my parents, I love them to death, but they knew what they knew because that's what they were told by their
Oh,
parents. And
I was a much better grandmother and great grandmother than I was a parent, because the parents do the best that they can with what they know, right?
yeah,
It's their background that made them who they are. One of the things,
strike
yeah,
together
strike
versus
the strike
strike
it.
against each
You're
other.
right.
Exactly.
Yeah. I want to share something else. Just recently, it was shared in a group I'm in, and it was an obituary. And it was a young woman who passed from cancer, but she said allowed her the time, her illness allowed her the time to write her own obituary. And, I don't know whether you've ever done that. I've had that assignment. And I think back to when I wrote my first one, to who I wanted to, what do you want people to say about you in your obituary? So, what I recommend is you write your obituary now and then live by it.
I love that. I love that. And I have to say, there are some moments that I get hard on myself because I'm like, wait a minute, that's not how I want people to perceive me. But I am a spiritual being in a human vessel. And sometimes I have those moments, unfortunately. But I do try and make sure that, I live my life the way that I say that I would want on my tombstone. Um, so that is powerful, though. Absolutely. I
Our
haven't
lives
wrote
would be
my
very different if we did that, right?
Well, exactly.
Other
Exactly.
people are going to.
Other people are going to find healing in your wounds. Your greatest life messages and your most effective ministry will come from the deepest hurts. Rich
Yeah.
Warren. Absolutely. I love that. And it's true. I mean, I can remember like the whole point of me even writing the book is number one, God telling me to sit my ass down in the chair and write it because some people needed to hear, the journey and how I overcame it. And some people, it was just, I honestly, I never in my life thought that I would be doing what I'm doing right now. I
Oh, me
never,
neither.
growing up and that overweight little girl that, didn't have too many friends and was always pushed in the corner. And now I hear, talking to other people on, well, right now it's
But if
YouTube,
you
but it will
felt
be
like
national
that,
TV.
somebody else feels like that. Do you know what? I never
Exactly.
finished high school. I wasn't smart enough. But you know what I learned? I learned over the years, and thankfully somebody believed in me and convinced me to go back to school. Not because I needed to, but I had to prove it to myself.
Hmm.
And it's just that we all learn differently, and people put us into those little cubby holes. Let's
Yeah.
not put us into cubby holes, right, you guys? We're all our own people, and hang with the people that want to support you, that want to be part of your life. Like I
Yeah.
was blessed to meet a person, my husband, who believed in me, but even he couldn't see where I could go. It wasn't until I worked with a woman that had a master's degree in education who said, Janet, you are smart enough. And I'd say, no, I'm not. She says, yes, you are. So believe me, we moved away. I moved across country and we lost track raising kids and stuff. And when my first chapter was published in an anthology, I tracked her down. We'll see each other in a couple of weeks again. I tracked her down and I took her an autographed copy of that book. And it was about journaling, and I had journals made and I gave her a copy. And you know what? Just to honor the fact that, say thank you to those people that have helped you on your journey. That's another thing I do. Gratitude. You know, we have to have it.
Yeah. Some of the most powerful
Yes,
words we can say to one
definitely,
another is,
Jeffrey.
I believe in you.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And so it's funny because somebody had given me this sign. Right. It was Karen Arson had given me this sign that says, um, the true art of love or the meaning of love is when somebody, something along the fact that it was, I should go get it. It's in my bedroom. Something about the art of when somebody shares with you what their true passion is, that you recite it back to them. That's true love, or true friendship. And it's funny because I've had that sign for 10 years or longer, and it's been in every place that I've moved to. And it wasn't until this morning when I was talking to my business partner and retelling her, what she is all about, and reciting to her back to what, our mission our values
Yep.
are, why we're put on this earth, why we're helping different organizations, and to speak that back to them, and just refresh them, that person, and just reiterate, hey, I believe in you, and I wouldn't be on this journey with you if I didn't believe in you. So
Exactly. And we come together like just how we met. Like just people just show up. You
yeah.
know, um, Jeffrey's on another group that I'm on, that I see him once in a while in there, and we're friends on LinkedIn. And do you know what? We're so powerful when we come together. And like Natalie, that I just shared with you with her love notes,
Mhm.
nothing but love notes. Do you know there's so much good in all of us? Why are we afraid to show it? Like I think that if we're going to be judged or whatever, but I think I'd rather be judged for doing something out of the norm
Mhm.
than doing something in the norm. Like they
Exactly.
called me at work Janet from another planet. I'll keep
I
it.
love that. I love that. And Ram Ram, are we from Bangalore or Guerrero? No, we're from Canada. Janet's on the opposite side of Canada. I'm on one
Yeah.
side, she's on the other.
Yep.
uh,
But I know where you are because I've been there.
yes. And
Yeah.
I think I've been where you are at least once. I think. I don't know.
We should take the show on the road sometime, do what Chad's doing. We'll get a motorhome. I don't know whether I could walk it, but we could stop at different places and just talk to people.
Well, that's funny you said that because I'm meeting up with Chad when he hits Ontario.
Yeah, I
So
miss Chad. I was in France while Chad went through Alberta here. So
yeah, um, yeah. I was out in Calgary at one point. Actually 5 years ago in April, I was out in Calgary for the very first time, and I went to Banff. I had a girlfriend that worked for the federal government, and she was doing a job out there. So she said, "Come on out." And I had just met my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, and I left. I said I already had this trip planned before you came along, and I went, and I had a week out there, and it was great. I've seen the mountains and everything like that. And yeah, for those of you that don't know who Chad is, Chad Kennedy is walking Canada right now, raising awareness of PTSD. Um, so
and he's on
we support.
LinkedIn and on Facebook if anybody wants to follow his journey. And
Yeah.
it's what's Chad's C2? It's called C2C for PTSD. And it's
Yes.
Chad Kennedy.
Yes. Great guy. He was on the
Yeah.
show. He was on our show on Monday, and then he kicked off and went and started walking. So, truly a great guy.
And he's had all kinds of weather too. The poor guy. They've had snow. They've had rain.
Yeah, he's the poor guy. He's been through a lot there. So before we wrap up, I just want, so normally part of the show, Kimberly is being on, but Kimberly is recovering with her husband in Florida after having a major event this weekend. We were helping Greg Bicknell, and he's been on the show. So she's wrapping up with her husband before he flies back home. So the fundamentals. So I'm not sure if you remember what you put down, Janet, but
I can't remember.
So what if you could remember, or if you even think of 3 new things, and if you can't, I'll tell you what you wrote down. So
Give me a hint with the first one.
Okay. So fundamentals is your basic foundation. So your first one, you're not alone.
Yeah. Nobody's ever alone. We may think we are.
Right.
I think one is to be adventurous. Isn't one adventurous? And for me, travel is adventurous, and meeting new people is adventurous, and just stepping into something that's uncomfortable to see where it goes. And
Absolutely.
yeah. What
Absolutely.
else? Oh, God.
You have put
We
your
did this a long time ago, guys.
Yeah. She seriously, well, she was one of the good ones that just fills out her forms right away. Unlike some of my guests that I gotta chase. Your mind and body were created to heal, and you're never too old to learn and change your circumstances. Is what
So
you
true.
have
Do you know what? When that car accident where life could have been totally different and I may not have made it was just before my 50th birthday. And so I told my daughter, "You have to throw me a huge party." And I know there's people say, "Oh, don't throw me. I've been 20 for how many years?" No, guys, I got to this age. I'm still healthy. I've had my health issues. I'm leaving them behind because
Yeah.
I've got lots to live for. And
Yeah.
let's celebrate each time and keep moving and keep going and keep doing what we're doing. Age is only a number. I'll tell you right now, in my 50s, I was climbing a mountain in Greece on an archaeological dig with a bunch of 20-year-olds with the University of Alberta. And I
Love it.
studied in Greece or in Rome for 3 weeks, studying first century Rome with, again, a bunch of 20-year-olds. Life's too short to say I'm too old for something. If you want to do it, do it. Find a way. And if you can't find a way, call me. I'll help you.
My great grandmother, went back to school at the age of 80 to get a degree. So if my great grandmother can do that, anybody can do it. I mean, right now with with everything that's available to us, there should be no reason why you can't learn something new. Absolutely.
And I'm
Absolutely.
in a BA program right now, and but I've been to university in my 30s, 40s, 50s, and now in my 60s. You know what? I never got my degree, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you don't get the degree. It's the learning. Like, I am so curious and I love history. And one of the best gifts I had was my girlfriend talking us into going to do this house sit in France because we weren't going to travel this year. But I tell you, that was such a gift. We met amazing people, and the country is so beautiful.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I love what you said about your 50th. I'm like, okay, so everybody be warned, because for my 50th, which is in 5 more years, there better be one hell of a party. And I'm actually thinking that maybe we should rent a yacht or rent a cruise ship. And everybody that's been on Unstoppable Overcomers
I think that would be awesome.
should be
Let's
part
plan
of
it.
this. And we have one hell of a celebration, including fireworks. Because my
Yep.
birthday is on the 5th of July. I
Yep.
just missed the 4th. So, we're gonna have one hell of a party out in the islands. And so everybody that has been on my show and that will have been on the show for the next 5 years
Yeah.
is all invited. And we're just gonna party it up, have some fun.
I think that'd be great.
I
Just
think
think of the
so.
connections you'll make. We'll all make
Right.
in meeting these other
Right.
people.
Like, I'm just
Yeah.
excited thinking about it. I told my mom the other day, I won't be in the country when I turn 50, and she got all upset, and I'm like, well, you'll be with me. She thought maybe I just wanted to be by myself, and my husband and
No.
I. I'm like, no, I'm like, I want my family around me, but we sure as hell won't be in Canada.
Yeah.
We'll be anywhere but. Maybe then I'll have my lakefront property.
Who knows? Lots will be happening.
That's right. See, Melody likes that idea. She was on the show, so she's definitely part of that. So,
Yes.
with
I'll
that, folks,
definitely connect Melody.
yes, yes, I love Melody. She's amazing. Um, Thank you to our guests in the comments. We really appreciate you showing up tonight. Thank you to those of you that are on the replay, and thank you, Janet, so much for being on the show tonight. Do you want to leave our guests with anything in this last final minute?
Just enjoy your life, and by all means, you know what? Listen around you because there's Dorothy in here, there's me, there's Jeff, there's Melody, there's all these people that have been commenting, and all the people that watch the show. There's always somebody that'll be here for you. And you know what? We're here. Somebody was there for me, I'll be there for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Love that. And that's why
And
we're
they can
doing it.
always order my book. It's a
Yes.
good book.
It is a good book. It is a great book. And I've only read 2 chapters. So I can't wait to dig into the rest of this book. Get your book on Amazon. And it's called The Year the World Paused by
Yeah,
Janet.
stories of inspiration and transformation. And wherever you are, write me a note because my husband and drive and travel all over the place. And we will be driving down to Florida in November. So if anybody's along the route, let me know. I'll stop and autograph it.
Ooh. That's an offer you can't refuse. And you're welcome, Melody, for shining our light on the world.
Thank
That is
you.
who we are.
Yeah.
With that, folks, have an amazing week. This is the kickstart to your week. So have an amazing week. Be unstoppable in everything you do, and we'll see you next week. Bye
Take
for
care.
now.
Bye. Thanks, Dorothea.
Thank you.